IncubatorWarehouse.com presents HatchTalk Podcast. All right, everybody, welcome back to HatchTalk. Hopefully, everybody is getting into their hatching season, and I wish you best success in hatch rates. Today, we're talking about the DIY, do-it-yourself incubators. So, we're all about the DIY today. Everybody, can buy the fancy smanchy incubators, but can you build one? That's the question. We're going to go over what you need to do, what you need to have, and some good strategies. So, yeah, I'm excited for this one.
That's the plan. Yeah.
Awesome. Well, I keep seeing people making some strange incubators out there all over the internet. Some work pretty well. Others completely look like it's a failure. So, in this episode, we're going to kind of cover over a few things that definitely you're going to need. First off, the container it's in, the heat source, how you're controlling the temperature, what are you doing for humidity, are you getting airflow, how are you monitoring it, what kind of safety things are you doing, how are you turning the eggs. I mean, those are all things you want to address. So let's get into it.
Let's do it.
So I watched a guy literally turn a big jug into an incubator the other day, and I kind of want to try it.
I probably wouldn't suggest a big jug, but I do commend you for wanting to try the DIY. But we can find you some better options than some kind of plastic jug or a plastic tote for sure.
Yeah, and my defense, I think that guy was like in the Philippines or something because he looked
All
like
right,
he
fair.
probably hatch an egg just sitting in the sun.
Working with what he has, I like it. This is the time of year where we do get a lot of people calling in, sending emails, and ordering product to create their own incubators, whether it be tabletop or cabinet size. Um, it's actually a really popular thing to do within the hatching community. And one of the biggest things that I notice is everybody always has great ideas. Like, there's always some great ideas coming in and people talking about it and stuff. However, the execution in the build, getting all the fine points taken care of is where it really gets important. Um, a lot of people think you can just throw a thermostat in there or throw a light bulb in there and put an egg turner or whatever, and you're good to go. And unfortunately, I wish it was that easy, but it is not. And we're going to talk about the ups and downs and what to expect when building your own incubator today. And it's going to be fun. And we're going to educate Shawn a little bit on it so he's not building one out of a jug.
Thanks. So, get into it. So, what kind of containers would we want to be looking for? I mean, obviously, a jug's probably not the best, but
Right.
what do you think?
So if you stop and look back at like the history of incubators, they've been made out of everything: styrofoam, wood, plastic, whatever the case may be. But the container is, your important starting point. It's where you really are going to set off the whole spark of the idea for the build. Um, I I've seen people build tabletop incubators out of all kinds of stuff. One of the one of my favorite things that I see people use are those styrofoam cartons that, like, when you have meat shipped to you or something that's frozen and needs to stay frozen. Those are great little containers. I've seen people use um, like little mini fridges, full size fridges, old like merchandise like containers that you would see in like a convenience store that holds sodas and stuff like that. The possibilities are really endless. You can build your own case if you want, or you can use an existing case from another incubator and just add your own components if that's what you have. um, the case, while it is super important and it is going to be the starting point of your build, it's not the most detrimental part. So as long as you have something that's going to allow you access to your eggs, obviously, it's going to hold and maintain temperature properly, not some thin plastic tote or anything like that. And it's going to allow you to make modifications. That's going to be your first set, your starting point, if you will. So any of those things I've listed that I've said customers have used before, you can use them, you can make them work. But the case is not necessarily shouldn't necessarily be your focal point when you're building. And we're going to talk about, the important things like the thermostat, circulation, vent hole placement, whether or not you can even put an egg turner in there and how that's going to affect the internals. Um, so yeah, we've got a lot to cover, and
Yeah.
I don't even know where to start. I'm so excited about it.
Well, from what I've seen, a lot of people for the DIY do go with those styrofoam coolers just because they're pretty
Mhm.
readily available. They're cheap and they're pretty good for insulation. So, I mean,
Yep.
if you're just, first starting out, want to try something, I recommend getting one of those styrofoam coolers or even an old cooler you don't use anymore. Um,
Yep.
just have good insulation, keeping the heat in, keeping the airflow minimal is going to be big.
Yep, yep, and once you have your container picked out, you're gonna wanna figure out, how much power it's gonna take to actually get that case up to an operating temperature for incubation.
Yeah.
Generally, what we suggest to people is what we call the light bulb test. It's very simple, it's very basic. You're gonna take a white light bulb, 40, 60 watt, 80 watt, 100 watt, whatever you're working with, and you're just gonna put it in the container. You can shut the lid on the cord, you're going to put it in there and you're going to let it sit for a while, 12 to 24 hours to acclimate. We talked about acclimation before. And we're going to make sure that the wattage of that bulb is documented and the temperature that that bulb reaches is documented.
Good
Generally, you
good
want to
good
shoot for,
good point for people because some people are not as bright as others. Like myself, I try to do this with an LED bulb.
oh, yeah, that's, yeah, yeah,
LED bulbs don't
that's,
produce heat, people.
nope. No, they don't. I've encountered that issues and some troubleshooting with customers before. I love the idea. They're very convenient and easy to use, but they're not gonna work. They're not gonna
The
produce any
bulb's
heat
gonna
for you.
matter. So just
Yeah,
making
yeah.
it I wanted to say that before we go past the bulbs because that is a mistake.
Yeah, that is very fair. Do not use LED bulbs. Um, you know, uh, they may look good. You can use them for lighting up the inside of your incubator if you want, but they're not going to provide any heat. But once you do find, a set wattage that's going to keep your container at that level where you need to be, yeah, your next step is going to be procuring a heat source and a thermostat. Um, Generally, I find most tabletop size incubators, anything from, like a small cooler, medium sized cooler down to, the meat containers we were talking about. Those generally only need maybe 100 to 125 watts, somewhere around there. Um, and that's max. You can usually get away with 80 or lower. And a good product for that particular setup is going to be our IncuKit Mini. The IncuKit Mini is an all-in-one thermostat heater setup. You can control the way it's going to run. You can control where you're putting it in your incubator. It's not going to have to be set on the top. You can put it in the front or the side, whatever's convenient for you. You just want to make sure it's someplace that's going to be centralized and giving good airflow. Um, if you are building something bigger than a tabletop size unit and you find that you need a couple hundred watts, maybe a little bit more, we have our IncuKit XL systems, which is a thermostat and a separate heater fan unit that just plug and play with each other. You can actually get about 250 watts of power out of the IncuKit XL. And that's generally enough to do something as big as like a GQF size cabinet incubator or a little bigger. You can get away with that. Um, to me, and in all honesty, those are some of the most convenient parts that are out on the market to use. You don't see a lot of build your own incubator type products, but the IncuKit Mini and the IncuKit XL are definitely what we're going to be basing the rest of this conversation on, and
Yeah.
and suggesting that you definitely use, because there's just not an easier way to really do this, in my opinion.
Yeah, and that it saves you a lot of money, getting a nice kit like the Inky kits because you're gonna take the guesswork out of it. And if you really want to dial in your hatch rate, you had to have something like the Inky kits that let you do that without having to worry and check on it all the time. It'll let
Yeah.
you dial
Yep.
that in. And that's, I mean, if you're taking it serious, if this isn't just like a let's mess around and see, like if you're wanting to build a good DIY incubator, it's totally worth it to get the Incu kits just because it's going to save you so much hassle and so much time. So I highly recommend it for sure.
Yep, yep. Moving on from thermostats and heaters, the next biggest thing and the biggest issue that I see customers encountering is airflow and circulation. That it's an often forgotten specific thing that needs to happen for incubators. There has to be a way for air to flow in and out of that incubator. It helps get rid of hot pockets. It obviously feeds in fresh oxygen to the eggs that are in there trying to hatch. So, a common mistake that happens, someone buys a mini fridge or, one of those nice merchandise soda fridges or whatever, and they get it all set up and it's great and it's just constantly overheating. It's not running right. There's hot spots all over inside of it. The reason usually behind that is since those are sealed so tight and so well, there's no place for that heat to escape. There's no way to exchange fresh air and oxygen in there. And there's no circulation happening besides what the fan is creating for itself, which generally isn't enough. If you notice on any pre made incubator that you buy, it's going to have at least one, if not multiple, vent holes in it. Generally, they can be plugged. You can use butterfly vents to get the a more precise airflow if you want, but you definitely have to consider airflow, air circulation. Uh, those are going to be a huge determining factor on whether or not your incubator is going to be a successful DIY project or a crap it.
Yeah. Well, I mean that's just a good point. Stale air kills the hatch rate more than anything else because it's
Yep.
going to tank your temperatures. They're going to be too variable. It's going to tank the humidity, too variable. If you have stale air in the incubator, you can't circulate it around. You're really going to struggle getting a good hatch rate. Yeah, you might even barely even get like a 15-20% if it's a stale air. So,
Yeah. Yeah.
something to watch
Most
out for.
that's going to burn through the oxygen levels, so quickly that your chicks are going to have hardly nothing to actually breathe when it comes time for them to take their first breath, which that's something to keep in mind with that.
Yeah.
Um, Once you get, a couple vent holes put in there, generally, I suggest putting them in the upper 20% of the incubator. So if you're doing a tabletop size one, somewhere in the lid is a good place to put one. If you're doing a cabinet, the upper sides of the walls, the back panel, or the top of it, great places to put venting. Sometimes with the larger incubators, though, you may have to put multiple ports on there. You may have to put some at the top or the bottom. Just really depends on your specific setup, how you're building it, and the issues you're experiencing. There's really no set way to do a DIY incubator unless you're just copying like a GQF model or a Dickies or whatever it may be. And I highly suggest you get creative with it. Don't copy people. Do something cool.
Yeah. Yeah, I think one of these times we got to have a DIY incubator off. Me versus the wizard.
Yeah, yeah. I'm down. I'm down. It wouldn't be my first rodeo and it won't be my last. I'll tell you that one. I look forward to it.
And those who are listening to the podcast right now, tag us to your DIY incubators. I'd love to see the creative ones you've made. And if you've had a great like pattern and success rate, drop it to the community. Drop a link and some pictures and let us know, what you did. We'd love to see your DIY incubators for sure. So
Yeah,
tag us to
definitely.
it and email some over to us. We'd love to see those.
Yep. Yep. The next thing we encounter with DIY incubators is the turning system. That seems to be something that people really struggle with because there's not a there's not a set there's not a product out there that I've ever seen that is a turning system that's going to be made for a DIY incubator. You can get motors, you can get the components to build one, but generally any kind of pre-made turning systems made for a specific model or a certain version, so they're going to be limited to a certain size, length, diameter, whatever it may be. And with the tabletop units, really you're kind of stuck with either using a pre-made, one of the pre-made plastic style egg turners, or hand turning them. um, you can always try to do a DIY egg turner. Usually people have best luck with the rolling style rather than the tilting style, but that is one thing that I can say honestly we've never really been able to pinpoint as far as what is a convenient setup for someone to use. So when it comes to the egg turning system, that's one of your biggest variables because it's totally going to depend on what you're building, the size of the unit, and what you're expecting from it. If you want to use up all the space in your incubator and have the best capacities possible, you're going to have to get a little creative with it. If you don't mind having some open space and using some pre-made parts, you can get away with just using stuff that's already on the market. I had a guy, he built one of his cabinets out of a used stand-up freezer, and he ended up just daisy chaining, I think it was 6 or 7 of the Hovabator style yellow plastic turners together, and he'd have them side by side and down the rows and stuff, and it did some good work. There was some troubleshooting that comes with that because each one of those motors creates its own heat, and when you add up, 5, 6, or 7 of those motors, they're gonna be generating a lot of heat, so we had to double up on his circulation, add a couple extra vent holes and stuff, but he got that to work, and as far as I know, he's still using it. It's been several years since we've worked on that one together.
Yeah, and I mean, you can always try rolling the dice and not doing the no turn method, which uh,
Oh,
I don't.
I
I've
I
seen
hate it.
that.
I hate that.
I've seen that coming up quite a bit on the internets right now, and people are just you know chucking all the eggs into the incubator, and we'll see.
Yeah,
But I
yeah.
mean, from what I
I
can
I'm old
tell,
school.
yeah.
Yeah, go ahead.
Oh, sorry. From what I can tell, if you're gonna try that, you gotta make sure the egg positioning is right first off, and it's not totally, no turn. I think they do turn them a little bit, but I mean, if you want a really low hatch rate, I mean, that's up to you.
Yeah, and we're not bagging on anybody's style or procedure. I'm sure maybe
Hey, if you have
certain ways it
plenty of
works.
eggs and you don't care about a hatch rate, you just have like, I've got tons and dozens of eggs, who cares? It's a numbers game that way. I mean, that's up to
Yeah,
you. But
yeah. And the reason turning is important is because that exercises that embryo inside the egg.
yep.
That gives it the ability to move around, make sure, it's not sticking to one side, and you're gonna get a healthier chick when the eggs are turned. Even the mother hen on the nest, she moves those eggs around when she's nuzzling them or moving around with her beak or getting up and down, whatever it may be. Those eggs get quite a bit of movement, and
Yeah.
and it doesn't take a lot, but, the way I kind of see it is if it's worked for, 20, 30, 40, 50 years, it's probably a pretty good technique. And unless you can come up with a way to make it better, I just kind of stick with the norm. And like I talked about in the previous podcast, I struggled with the whole concept of dry incubation, dry hatching, all that stuff. But once you learn the technique, it works. And the same can go for the no turn technique. Once you learn the procedure behind it and if it works for you, it works for you, but definitely doesn't work for this guy. I'm not a fan of it.
Yeah, I mean, I wanna try to hatch as many chicks as possible, so if I can pull out all those little variables, I definitely would, so I highly suggest figuring out a good way to turn your eggs. It
Yeah.
could be really tough with a DIY system, that's for sure.
Yep.
So, um, when you're picking out what you're doing and planning out your hatch, if you're gonna be hand turning, better make sure it's not gonna be over spring break. Um, that's a problem. So you
Yep.
got
Yep.
you got to watch out and plan ahead. When you're doing your pre-plan for a hatch, put it on the calendar because if you're hand turning, you got to watch out for that.
Yep. Yep. And if you're hand turning, you need to do it at least 3 times a day. Always do it in an odd amount so it doesn't sit on the same side every night.
Yep. So
Yeah.
after we
So
got the turning down, if you can turn, then we want to make sure we're really watching things, right? So you want to make sure you have a good, thermometer and hydrometer, especially for a DIY system, something you
yep.
can take and position around at different parts of the incubator and check and see if you're getting those hot spots or cold
Yep. Yep.
spots.
And speaking of positioning, the position that you put your temperature sensor probe is very important. Your thermostat, that sensor probe needs to be placed in a good spot where it's centralized in the incubator It's pulling a general variance or general temperature spot for you. And like Sean said, you want to make sure that that's not a spot that's a hot spot. It's not going to be a cold spot. So with obviously proper circulation and stuff like that, you generally won't have to deal with that. But if you have your sensor up in the top of the incubator, it's generally going to run a lot hotter than it should. Or if you have it down below, it's going to be trying a lot harder to run. It could definitely burn out your heater units. So a nice centralized spot where it's going to pick up a good level temperature. That's something you really want to do and keep in mind with that.
For sure, for sure. Always have a good. Get a couple, have a backup. Make sure you're dialing everything in. That's key for any incubation, but especially for the DIY, just because you're getting your own hatching system. You're trying to figure it out. So your own
Yep.
little scientist, test and see. So definitely
Yep.
do
I
that for
agree.
sure. So humidity, what there's different. Well, I mean, you could be as simple as putting a cup in there or a sponge, or what are some good like what are some ways? I mean, you're the incubation wizard, Patrick. What are some unique ways you've seen for people controlling humidity?
I've seen all kinds of things. I've seen people create their own bottle feed system where, they can feed it from the outside way before it was just a mainstream thing. All incubator guys or all incubator companies were doing. I've seen I've seen on the internet, somebody used one of those. It's like a tabletop fountain. It's for like just like what you see, like just something that looks like a little cool knickknack. The water
Oh yeah,
flows out of it and it
yeah, like
creates a little mist and stuff.
yeah,
So
a
I've seen
desktop
those.
waterfall.
Yeah, I've seen that used in there. All kinds of stuff. I don't know how serious some of the things I've seen are, but generally in most cases, like you can get away with just a little water tray, a sponge, nothing too crazy. Again, it's all going to be experimental because you're building a custom sized cabinet or tabletop. You're not going to have a set procedure or a set amount of water or anything to use. So you're gonna have to play around with some ideas. I generally recommend just keeping it simple, using just a shallow pan that you can put water in. And if you need to increase it, add a sponge to it. You can put the sponge in there on its side so it wicks water up, creates more surface area. But if you really want the cheat code, the humidikit's the way to go.
Yeah,
It will only work on tabletops and most, cabinet size incubators that are GQF size or smaller. If you go any bigger than that, generally the humidikit won't work for you. But it's going to be your fail safe and the easiest thing you can do for most DIY builds.
yeah, that's that's true. The humidity kit, if you really want to dial it in, that's the move. Period. Whether it's a DIY or a tabletop incubator in general,
Yeah.
something
Yep.
that's automatic. You want to like hands free, worry free. Boom. There you go. That's the biggest thing to cover.
Yeah. Yep, I agree, I agree. It's definitely a game changer. You've heard us talk about it in previous podcasts, and the Humidikit's definitely a huge go-to for incubation. I mean, anytime we get a new incubator in, a different model, something that it may not be compatible with, during my testing, I always try to figure out a way to make the Humidikit compatible and make it work with that unit. It's just once you use it, you can't go without it, in my personal opinion.
Yeah, it makes it a lot easier for sure. Um, yeah, check the show notes. Look for the link for that if you want to pick yourself up a worry free humidity kit for sure. Okay, so now that we have our incubator built, right? Big thing that people, just like if you have a store bought incubator, you want to make sure the placement of the incubator is going to be a stable environment. So, things to watch out for. Obviously, put it in like an interior room in your home, or your shop or whatever, that's going to have a stable climate, consistently between 70 and 80 degrees would be great. Okay. Avoid places like, drafty barns, or, places with a door that goes to the outside where it's going to pull and suck air in and out too much. Um, too humid environments. I don't recommend. A lot of people do put incubators in bathrooms. It's just really hard to control humidity levels if people are getting in the shower and things like that. So I don't recommend it unless it's a bathroom that you don't use very often. Um,
Or don't shower for 21 days.
or just, yeah, don't shower.
Yeah. Just be stinky, hatch some eggs, whatever
Be
works for you.
exactly, priorities, people, whatever you
Mhm.
want.
Mhm.
Um,
No, but Sean has a really good point. Climate is it's important whether you're using a store bought or DIY. The area that you're keeping it in, the temperature, the relative humidity, all that stuff. It's the same across the board. You've got to make sure you're doing your part in order to give yourself the best success rates with your incubator, store bought or DIY.
exactly, exactly. You wanna make sure that it's going to be a um, stable environment. That's the biggest thing is
Hmm.
having it being stable. Then I mean, you're dealing with a lot of variables as it is when it comes to DIY. You're trying to troubleshoot and fix things all the time. So make the environment less of a variable at that. Do yourself a favor. That'd be best.
Yep. Yep. And just one thing to keep in mind when you're doing your own DIY stuff, anytime you're dealing with electrical, heat, water, all that stuff, you want to make sure that you're being smart and safe about it. You
Yes,
want to make sure that you're well versed and educated in wiring. You want to make sure that you're not creating a fire hazard or anything like that. One thing I really love about the IncuKit XLs is on the heating wafers for your heater fan modules on those, they have little thermal fuses. If it gets too hot, those fuses are going to pop. The heat's going to quit running. You can replace the wafers, you can replace it and get it back up and running, but it's going to save you from overshooting, getting too hot, and causing any kind of issues like melting the plastic or melting your wiring or just getting too hot and catching on fire. It's something that I think kind of gets overlooked when talked about with DIY incubators, but it's always something that should just be in the back of your mind anytime you're working with electrical and heat and stuff like that. You want to make sure you're being safe and that you have a good quality setup going. And if you don't, have yourself a good backup plan. Have yourself a fire extinguisher sitting there ready to rock if you need to. But I don't see that being something you definitely want to overlook or not consider when you're dealing with something like this.
for sure, for sure. Safety third, right?
Yeah, yeah. Yeah, yep, yep. If you wouldn't leave it, running overnight, don't hatch in it. That's the
that
kinda way to think about it. Like, if it's not something you feel is safe, you definitely don't wanna use it, you don't wanna risk it, and, you could always have someone come look at it who
well,
may be a little more in
and,
the know on that kinda stuff.
and anytime you're dealing with any kind of like heat and there's like just like people don't like to put heat lamps in coops. You gotta worry about collective heat building and risk of fire. So, I
Yep,
mean, just keep that in mind. You keep it safe. That's the biggest thing, and that you don't worry about. I mean, you don't want to burn your house down by all
yep.
means.
Yep, I can say I've never heard of or seen a situation where an incubator's caused a problem like that. So every now and then I've had customers tell me that, they've gotten it too hot or they've had an electrical issue where it caused some smoke or some damage to the case. But generally in most uses it's safe and easy to do. We just want to have that caveat out there that, if you're not sure, if you're not knowledgeable in the situation, have someone to help you do it.
Yeah,
Plain and simple.
exactly. Yeah, always have somebody get your second opinion. I mean,
Mhm.
you can have them double check your YouTube, experience of watching and doing, and then seeing. But yeah, have fun with it, but be safe.
Yep. Yep.
For sure. Well, anything else we want to touch on with doing a DIY incubation? Obviously, I recommend just do your research a little bit ahead of time. Come up with a good plan and a good
Yep.
model. I mean, there's plenty of other things out there. A lot of blogs, a lot of videos, people showing how they do theirs. But be creative with it.
Yeah, yeah. If at first you don't succeed, try again. It's not as easy as it sounds, but it's rewarding, and it is something that with a little bit of effort and research, I feel anybody can do really. But you know, it's something to keep in mind is a DIY incubator is going to require more attention to detail, more attention to how you have things set up because it's not something that's pre-designed, being mass produced. That they got the formula down. This is your formula. You're in charge of tweaking it and making sure that it's going to be everything that you need it to be. So
And
it's
I know
it's
this might
important.
go without saying. I'd probably do a DIY incubator after you've had chickens for a while. And you can do it with some eggs that are being hatched by your chickens. Don't go spending a lot of money on, eBay buying expensive chicken eggs and then throwing them into a DIY that you've never done before. Because
Yeah.
that's just common sense. But
Yep.
and it should be said, don't, if you're doing a DIY, maybe make sure the variable of the chicken eggs is something that's going to be good too. You know,
Yep.
we just had a little hatch at the office there that we had some sketchy chicken eggs and that didn't turn
Yeah.
out so well. So
Yeah.
that's always disappointing. So
Yep. Yep. It's definitely just, do your due diligence. That's really all you can do. Um, and it's a DIY incubators, not necessarily a necessity. It's something people usually do out of passion or because they enjoy it or they think they can do it better. So keep in mind that, there are other options out there. Um, but educate yourself a little bit first. And if you think you can take on the build, why not? Have some fun with it.
exactly, exactly, and keep an eye out. We will be launching soon a new level of DIY, which is the Printabator. So if you're big into the, third party, printing, we have our kits that are going to go with that. So look out for that coming down the pipe. We're still just doing a little more testing on it and getting the design all ready to go. So definitely keep an eye out
Definitely
for that.
definitely a neat concept, something I never thought I'd see, and, I like where we're going with it. I think once we got it fine tuned, it's gonna be a great little unit.
Feels like we're approaching it in the future for sure. Well, Patrick, you know what time it is.
My favorite time.
It is time to check some from clips from around the internet. Let's get into some Coop It or Crap It.
Let's see what everybody's up to.
All right.
Is it a useful tip or just clickbait? Is it a chicken hack or is it just crap? Keep it in your coop or flush it like poop. We clip the net, we rate the scoop, coop it or crap it.
All right. First up, from the chicken school. This is a good little trick. Definitely check this out. So, it's everybody's winter time. What a good dual purpose use of that ice scraper. I'm just going to say that's great way to, you know, brush off all of the chicken droppings right on your, you know, nesting branches at night.
Yeah, I like it, I
I
like it.
love it.
Definitely don't put it back in your car when you're done with it, but
Well, that
yeah,
could
that's
be the
pretty fancy.
dedicated chicken poop scooper.
Yeah,
But
yeah,
it's your coops get so dusty, and to have a little dual purpose tool like that, I think this is a great chicken hack, honestly,
yeah, yeah, I love it. It's
for
definitely
sure.
smart.
One of the better chicken hacks. I like it. Yeah, it beats finding something else that just I know I've done in my trowel and other stuff, but that's great. I like that. All right, coming up next, we've got Regenerative Farms of America.
This is how I grow black soldier fly larvae to feed our chickens using only items I find in the waste stream. If you've never heard of black soldier fly larvae or if the sight of these little grubs disgusts you, stay tuned and I'll tell you why they're so beneficial later in the video. But first, how I grow them, because I think that's the most important practical information for most of you. I've been fiddling with this system for a few years, but this is basically what I've landed on. Black soldier fly larvae like to live in their food source, but once they get to the last stage and they're about ready to turn into an adult fly, they have a natural urge to climb out of the muck and into a safe, dark place to turn into a fly. You can take advantage of this by getting a 5-gallon bucket, drilling some holes in the bottom that are about 1/8 of an inch so that the holes will allow excess liquid to drain out, but they're not big enough to allow an adult larva to escape. Then you build a little wooden frame that kind of holds the buckets at an angle, like so. Then you just add your food, put a plastic bin underneath the bucket as a collection tub, and wait, and it will fill up with larvae as they become mature. Now, an even easier way to grow black soldier fly larvae is to simply get a bucket that has no holes drilled in it, fill it with nasty food waste, and leave the lid just barely cracked. I didn't mention this with the wooden frame, but if you put food waste in those buckets, the black soldier fly larvae will come on their own. You typically don't have to add them to the bin, but if you have eggs or if you have larvae that you want to add into your bin, you can certainly do that. But the same idea applies with the standalone bucket system. If you leave that lid cracked, black soldier flies are going to come and lay eggs in the bucket, and the larva will hatch and start eating through the food waste. And now, instead of allowing the adult larva to self-harvest by climbing out of the bucket, in this method, you're just going to take the whole bucket and dump the entire contents of it into the chicken run after a few weeks when there's a ton of larvae growing on the food. Here in the Southeast, pretty much no matter what you do, if you start composting any sort of food waste, garden waste, you're going to get black soldier fly larvae showing up in your compost bin. So you're just taking advantage of that with the bucket as a way to collect the larvae and throw them to the chickens. So why black soldier fly larvae? What's the big deal? Well, other than the fact that they're a native insect and it's really important for chickens to be eating insects as part of their diet, they're very nutritionally beneficial. They're high in protein, fat, calcium, but the major thing that I'm interested in is they can break down almost any organic waste. The exception is that they cannot break down woody materials like lignin, but they can take care of roadkill, they can take care of manure, food waste of all sorts. They're very versatile in terms of the waste that they can turn into protein and fat. Additionally, the adult flies don't bother people. They don't have a mouth part, so they can't bite us. The adult flies don't seek out food because they don't have a mouth. They only exist to mate, and so they're really just not a nuisance. They're native, they're very nutritional, and they can take care of a waste problem that we have. But these are some easy ways to grow them using things you find in the waste stream. You can also get black soldier fly bins, buckets that are specially designed for black soldier fly larva farming. If you want to go that route, I think those are great too. Let me know what questions you got. Reminder that if you buy black soldier fly larva from GrubTerra using the discount code in the caption of this video.
All right. That's fascinating. You know,
That is really cool. Yeah.
I like the setup to get them like he did. It's a great protein source for your chickens. And if you're in an
Yeah.
area where that black soldier fly is native, why not have this part of your compost recycling method?
Yeah.
And
Yeah. Reduce, reuse, recycle. I love it.
I love this too, and I like that he even looks like he's got some hookups with some industrial parts, of the food system. He just gets a bunch of waste and throws it in there. That's great.
Yeah.
Um,
Yeah.
yeah, I would. I mean, don't piss off your
If we,
neighbors and put this over on the side of the property where they're at because they might get a lot of flies coming in.
yeah.
Keep that in mind. But yeah, that's not a bad idea.
Great idea. I love it.
Yeah, I mean they're not nuisance flies as far as biting flies, but they are a nuisance if they're getting into your house. Believe me.
Yep. I believe that.
My previous house, I had horse property. We always got flies just coming in, no matter what. So
Mm.
yeah, that's the only thing I'd say. Be careful where you put it, but that's great. All right, now from the Stewart Family Farms.
Everyone that's asked me why I do this in my breeding pens with adults, that I'm not worried about toxicity and things, or the dander and the feathers that just don't get raked up well after a molt. And yes, it's dark because it's hot as heck in South Florida even in January. So I do this at night.
This is a great way to get rid of those feathers for sure. But I can't imagine the smell that she is creating right now. The smell of
Yeah.
burning feathers is pretty noxious. But I mean, you had to clean the coop out for sure.
Yeah. This may be definitely a situational thing. Don't know if I'd recommend this for everybody, but if it works for them, it works for them. I think personally, I'll stick to a rake, but that's interesting.
Not bad for the run. I mean, obviously she's not doing the deep litter method or that whole coop and run would go up in flames. But
Yeah. Yeah.
if you got the sand base to it, why not? That's get rid of those feathers real quick.
Yeah.
Um,
Yeah.
and I mean, I don't think it'd hurt the chickens. I mean, it's just going to be carbonated, basic burnt carbon, so they're going to pick at that
Yeah. Yeah.
anyways.
Yeah. I don't think it would hurt them either. I think it's, um,
I think she enjoys doing this.
Yeah, it's different. It's a way to be, it's a way to show your ingenuity, and if it works for you, it works for you. That's awesome.
Yeah, just mask up. I just can't imagine what that smell's gonna smell like. If you ever burnt feathers, it doesn't smell good.
No, it does not.
All right. Now from Stephanie Rainbow Egg Boutique. There we
I'm
go.
going to show you what I do with the eggs after day 21 if they haven't hatched. I'm going to tap on it. Can you guys hear that? Okay, that one's still alive then, so that one goes back in the incubator. If you want to check as well, and you hear no chirping, you can just check with the torch, and you should be able to see movement in there, which I can. So that's going to go back in the incubator. Here is another one that I have. I've tapped it. I can't hear any chirping. To see if I can see any movement. Usually that's not a very good sign, but it looks like it did try to internally pip. There is no movement. You can also do a water test as well. You can put these in a glass of water, and if you see it moving and bobbing around, then it still has life. If not, then unfortunately it's passed. So I'll show you what I mean by the glass test. This is lukewarm water. I'm going to pop it in, and we're going to wait to see if we can see any bobbing or moving around. That's better. No movement. Unfortunately, this one didn't make it. This was one of the ones that I ended up fixing with some nail polish.
Huh.
There is some faint chirping coming from there. That one's going back in.
That's fascinating.
Yeah, that's interesting. I've never seen the float test with the eggs before like that. That's different.
I've
Yeah.
tapped to see if they're alive, but man, that's a high power flashlight. It's like lighting up her hand.
Yeah. That poor bird.
Yeah.
I like it. I think this is a really smart way to go about it. Generally, you want to be careful with birds that are taking a little longer to hatch, but never hurts to give them all a fighting chance.
Yeah, and this, like she said, this is after 21 days. So
Yep.
like you're running the gamble anyway, which way you're doing it, but it's a good little tricks to test. And then the nail polish trick, I really wonder about that. Like, because you're worried about, it shrink wrapping obviously after you've opened the incubator and the lockdown, but maybe that'll help.
So
the shrink
generally,
wrap? I don't know.
when I've seen that, it's when you get an egg and before you put it in, it's already got a little crack, or maybe it got stepped on
Oh,
or
that's
something.
when she did it.
Still
Okay.
viable. Yeah, you can use wax as well.
Oh, okay. Cool. Well, that's
Yeah, definitely. I like that. That's a good little piece of knowledge for people there.
yeah. Okay, so this one's from White House on the Hill.
Love them.
Eggs today, and my Nurture Right 360 incubator is not cooperating. I can silence it, but wait. So my all-time favorite incubator, tabletop incubator at least, is the Nurture Right 360. And as you can hear, mine is broken. I've had this now for probably 3-4 years. Menu button has stopped working. I don't know if it's worth getting in there and trying to mess with it, but got another one ordered. Oh gosh, screen just cut out.
Oh.
Screen cut out. If you just touch the lid at all,
We have a part for that.
Yeah.
It makes it erratic. Oh gosh, what's it doing? So the electronics on it have gone haywire. It's getting loud, and I think it's ran its course. Time to unplug it. Nurture Right 360, incubator served me well. It's time to get a new one. So we're trying to...
All right. What do you think went
Great,
wrong
great
with it?
model of incubators, by the way. There, the Nurture Right 360s.
For sure. Yeah.
What-
No.
what do I think
they're
went wrong?
Solid. Yeah. I think the
Yeah.
power supply just has a short in it or something.
So I think it's his control module. I think it's his motherboard.
Oh, okay.
We actually carry replacement parts for the Nurture Right 360. We don't carry the incubators themselves, but we do carry replacement parts. And generally, when we see these issues, something with the motherboard and the port just not lining up, or something with the motherboard itself shorting out causes these problems. If you're wanting to replace parts on your Nurturite 360, we have them here at Incubator Warehouse. Um, I think it's definitely worth it if you've had good success with it. I hate to see any kind of incubator just thrown away or given up on when it can be repaired. But in this situation, I definitely think it's his motherboard fried out, and he needs to replace it. But sounds like he ordered himself a new one.
And that's a good hack too, honestly. If you, I mean, the Nurturite 360 is a solid incubator. If you have one, or if you see one on Facebook Marketplace, like I just picked one up, honestly. I They said that the turner motor burned down on it, and I got it for $25.
Oh,
And the turner
good.
motor's super cheap. So I've got a nice Nurturite that I'll do a little video series on, that you can see you can get a good incubator used and just switch out the parts. This one, yeah, just switch the part out. Like, don't go and spend, like, gosh, those Nurturites can be up there, up to $180 brand new
Yep.
that I've seen. So, whew, yeah, switch out
Yep.
the part. It's possible. Now from R.Homestead on TikTok.
So I kind of made this thing as a joke. I didn't think it would work. It's just a plastic tote.
So we got a DIY incubator
And
she's
I laid a
made
blanket
here.
on top.
Just a cheapo plastic tote and some outside
Junk I found in
insulation.
a shipping box.
Definitely
Okay.
an
Ran a cold
interesting setup there.
Yeah, I'm sure
Yeah.
that's safe.
Possible fire hazard, but who am I to
And
judge?
oh my god.
Oh, she's got a little
Oh.
insulation with metal signs there, and a
Okay.
classic
shocked.
lamp.
Love the lamp. Love the lamp. And a
Appreciate that.
hatch chick. I'll be danged.
All right,
Just
she got
one.
one. A few look like they're pepping here too, so that's cool.
Yeah.
And then I took these,
Definitely not the way
little
I would do it,
signs.
but I mean, if she has
Oh.
the eggs and
stuck them in there.
wants to experiment, why not?
Right,
Go for it.
at
Try it
100.
out.
Yeah, I think she probably got a better hatch rate if she
Oh my goodness.
drilled a little holes in for a little air circulation in there and maybe put a fan.
Okay, so I kind of
Yep,
made this
yep.
thing as a joke.
That's
I
cool.
didn't think it would work.
Oh, interesting. Good for her. Good
Fun.
for her. Highly don't suggest that, but good for her.
Yeah, hey, we got one chicken. I wonder if any others else tapped out. So we'll see. Cool. Yeah, I would definitely. I mean, she's trying her first one. It's a next reiteration might be better, but cool.
Yeah.
Okay. Next, we got this one on TikTok. Breaking news. You don't need to turn your eggs. You can also stack them and hatch even more. I'm going to say that's
What?
not breaking news. I think that's false news. Fake news,
Yeah. Fake
as
news.
our president
Fake
would
news.
say. Fake news.
That's I would not suggest that. I definitely something I see more and more of as you
What
know
What
things
did you
become
mean by
trendy.
hatch more? Like, you're putting
I
more in there. You might. It's a numbers game, maybe. I don't know.
Yeah, maybe that's what they're doing. I don't see how all those eggs would get turned and get proper heating and humidity levels. Like it's seems gluttonous to me, I guess. I don't know. It's definitely not something I would try, but it's something I want to research a little bit to see the method behind this mayhem, if you will.
Yeah, yeah. I think that's we can look into it. And hey, if you've done this stacking method, comment on the video here. Let us know what you did, or do a video response. I'd love to see how this is actually working, because exercising that membrane is pretty important usually. So that's what Mother Nature does with the hens. So you tell us. And this is opposite from everything else I've seen. All these eggs are turned on the side. From what I've seen, that people actually do this as a method that they have it pointing up. So
Yeah.
let us know. Well, Pat-
Interesting.
Patrick, that's it for Coop It or Crap It. But some decent chicken hacks we saw, I would say. So
Yeah.
if you're wanting to try the DIY, I mean, I kind of want to build an incubator and see what happens. But feel free to do it. Let your imagination run wild, but do a little research ahead of time. I think that's going to be a big part of it. But I mean,
Yep.
that's kind of fun. Be your own little scientist. Be your own little engineer. Have a great project with you and your family and your kids. Why not try it yourself?
Yeah. Play with it. Have fun with it. Don't expect instant success, but it's definitely fulfilling once you get that thing set up the way it should be, and you start getting some good hatch rates. That's look at you. You did that. So definitely something that I suggest everybody tries if they have the time.
Yeah, give it a shot. DIY, do it yourself, make that incubator. Um, just mess around and find out, I guess.
Hmm.
Well, that's it from Hatch Talk. Everybody out there, happy hatching. Best of wishes. I hope your hatch rates are all successes. Until next time, I'm Shawn Bailey.
Patrick Lyle.
And this has been Hatch Talk. Thanks for coming along.
See you later, y'all.